The sound that came out of that amp stopped three separate conversations near the back of the room before anyone registered what was happening. It wasn't the loudness. The room had loud in it all night. It was the texture of the thing, dry and unpadded, like someone had pulled back a curtain that had been making everything softer than it needed to be. A man near the bar set his drink down. A woman mid-sentence just stopped. She didn't know why. Neither did the man next to her. Nobody had seen the figure on stage reach down and pull the cable from the pedal board. Nobody understood yet what that meant, but the sound knew. This was Chicago, November 14th, 1969. Pepper's Lounge on the South Side, and the man holding that guitar was not supposed to be there. 3 weeks before, that night, Jimi Hendrix was sitting in his father's kitchen in Seattle with his hands around a coffee cup that had gone cold. The Jimi Hendrix experience had been over for 2 months, not quietly. The kind of over that gets written about in short paragraphs on page 7, after the record labels have moved the name to a different column. 3 years, 3 albums, a band he'd built from nothing that had rearranged what people thought a guitar could say. And now the music press was running the question in print. In those careful phrases that mean the answer's already assumed. Was Jimi Hendrix finished? Al Hendrix had left a newspaper open on the table that morning. Not as a statement, just left it there. Open to the entertainment listings. Muddy Waters at Pepper's Lounge. November 14th, Chicago. Jimmy read it. Set the cup down. "I'm going," he said. Al looked at him across the kitchen. "Want me to call ahead? Get you a table close to the stage?" "No." Al didn't push. He knew that look. Pepper's Lounge held maybe 500 people on a full night, which is what every Muddy Waters night was. The stage sat low, barely 2 feet off the floor. The ceiling came down close. When the bass hit at the start of a set, you felt it in the soles of your shoes before your ears had time to organize the sound. The bar ran the length of the left wall, bottles catching the only real light in the place, amber in the mirror. The rest of the room ran on whatever the stage lights spilled out into the crowd, and that wasn't much. Jimmy paid $6 at the door. Cash. No name on the list, no manager coming out to shake his hand. He found a seat in the back, in the middle of the crowd, and ordered a beer and sat down. Out of context, no stage, no Marshall stacks, no costume, he didn't read as anyone in particular. A quiet man in a plain dark jacket. A few people nearby glanced over when he came in. Nobody placed the face. That was the point. Jimmy had grown up on Muddy Waters records in a way that had nothing to do with casual listening. He'd learned guitar alone, on an acoustic with a broken tuning peg, retuning by ear, playing along with records his father would spin on weekends. Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Robert Johnson. He was 12 years old and didn't know yet that what he was doing in that room alone would become the only thing he'd ever need to know how to do. The band came out at 9. Calvin Freeman first, settling in behind the drum kit the way men do when the kit is an extension of themselves. Then the piano player, then the bass, then Luther Baines on guitar, a sideman who had played with Muddy on and off for 11 years and knew that catalog the way a carpenter knows wood he's worked with for a long time. Not flashy, the kind of player whose job is to make the song hold together, not to step in front of it. He adjusted his amp and nodded at the piano man. Then Muddy Waters walked out. No rush. Dark suit, plain. He put one hand on the mic stand and the room leaned forward before he'd touched a string. They opened with Hoochie Coochie Man. The first bar moved through the room like weather. Jimmy sat in the back and listened without moving. Second song was Manish Boy. Luther was locked in, the guitar sitting right between the drums and the bass. That tight pocket where rhythm playing lives when the player knows what he's doing. But 2 minutes in, something shifted in Luther's right hand. A hesitation. Half a second, maybe less. The kind of thing that dissolves into the room noise of a live show. Jimmy caught it. He watched Luther's shoulder drop, watched the knees go soft underneath him. And then Luther Baines simply sat down on the stage floor. Not a fall exactly. More like a slow letting go, the body deciding it was done. His guitar slipped from his hands and hit the boards. The feedback cut through the room. The music stopped. Two men from the row crew were on stage immediately. The crowd noise came down all at once, replaced by something quieter and more uncertain. They got Luther upright and walked him off to the side stairs. His face was gray under the lights. Later, the road manager would say it was 2 days of not eating right and the heat from the stage. Nothing that wouldn't heal. But he was done, and the room knew it. Muddy Waters walked to the microphone. He stood there for a moment without speaking. One hand on the mic stand, looking out at the crowd the way a man looks when he's sorting through what to say versus what he's actually thinking. "I got a problem tonight," he said. His voice was even. No panic in it, but no performance either. "My guitar man's down. I've got 9 songs left on this list." The room gave a short laugh, but the tension held underneath it. "If there's a guitar man in this house who knows the blues," Muddy said, "now would be a fine time." A few hands went up across the room, tentative ones. The kind of hands that say, "I might be able to help, but I don't want to make a promise I can't keep." Muddy looked at them, nodded slowly. "I appreciate every one of you," he said, and the patience in his voice made clear that he meant it. "But I need somebody who knows these songs." The hands went back down. "Hold this moment," because what happened in the next 30 seconds had never happened in that building before. In the back of the room, a man put his hands on his knees and stood up. Nobody turned to look. The stage lights don't reach the back wall, and the man wasn't doing anything to draw attention. He just stood the way you stand when you've made up your mind, and started moving through the dark toward the stage. People in the aisle shifted aside without looking. Tall man in a dark jacket. That's all anyone registered. The first person who recognized him was Calvin Freeman behind the drum kit. Calvin had played a benefit show in New York 14 months before and had spent most of that night 3 feet from Jimi Hendrix. He looked up from the kit, saw the figure come out of the dark, and went completely still. He didn't say a word. He just watched. Jimi climbed the stage steps. When the light found his face, Muddy Waters turned. 2 men, never shared a stage before. One who had learned the language from a record player in a small room when he was 12. One who had written the first chapter of that language. They looked at each other for maybe 3 seconds. Muddy said, "You know these songs?" "Yes, sir," Jimi said. "Then let's play." Luther's guitar was still on the stage, cable still connected to the pedal board. Jimi picked it up and settled the strap over his shoulder. He looked down at the board. Wah wah, fuzz face, univibe, Octavia. 6 pedals all set to Luther's specifications, each one built to shape the sound before it reached the amp. To soften edges, add color, give Luther the voice he'd spent years building. Jimi looked at them for a moment. Then he reached down, pulled the cable from the pedal board, and plugged it straight into the Fender amp behind him. When the first chord hit, the room changed. No softening, no processing, just wire and wood and whatever the strings had in them that night. The man at the bar stopped mid-reach. The woman talking beside him didn't finish her sentence. Neither could have explained it. They just felt something different move through the air, the way you feel a temperature drop before you understand it is cold. Jimi settled into a shuffle, patient and low and steady. Not the sound he had brought to Monterey, not the coiled psychedelia of Voodoo Child. Something older than any of that. Something he'd found in his father's house, alone, following the groove of a record with a skip in it. Muddy heard it and turned his head. Just slightly, enough to see Jimi's right hand. Then he stepped to the microphone and started to sing. 9 songs. That was the list. Jimi kept the guitar underneath Muddy's voice on most of them, not above it. There's a real skill in that, knowing when to pull back, when to disappear into the rhythm. Most guitar players spend their whole careers trying to avoid it. Jimi did it without any visible effort. The crowd took about 2 songs to understand what was in front of them. Not Jimi Hendrix. Most of them still hadn't placed the face, but something in the way the guitar was sitting. The room started paying a different kind of attention around the 3rd song, a slow version of Long Distance Call. During the solo, a woman near the front stopped moving and stood with her arms at her sides. A man in the 5th row put his arm around the person next to him. Not a romantic gesture, just the instinct to reach for someone when music gets inside you in a way you weren't expecting. By the seventh song, most of the room was standing, not because anything was flashy, because nothing was. Muddy didn't sing the first two bars of the eighth song. He stood at the microphone and watched Jimmy's hands. Nobody noticed because they were watching the same thing. Then a small smile moved into the lines around Muddy's mouth, the kind that doesn't reach the teeth, and he came in at the third bar without missing the lyric. The set ended. 9 songs. The applause that followed took a moment to build, because people were coming back from somewhere and needed a beat to find themselves again. When it came, it was sustained and full-throated. But it wasn't frantic. It had weight to it. Jimmy set the guitar on the stand and walked off into the back corridor. He'd made it 30 feet down the hallway when a figure stepped out from the wall. Big man, broad shoulders, the red ES 335 case in his hand. The guitar B.B. King had been playing since 1958. He'd come in through the back entrance during the fourth song and listened to the rest of the set from that corridor. B.B. King looked at Jimmy, didn't say anything right away. Let the silence sit there for a moment. Then, "Boy, where you been hiding that?" Jimmy almost smiled. "Didn't hide it," he said. "Nobody asked." B.B. turned that over, then nodded once, slowly, like something that had been slightly out of alignment had just settled into place. They stood there a while, not talking much. 2 men in a corridor after a long set, the music still warm in the air between them, neither needing to say out loud what both understood. Jimi Hendrix died 10 months later in London on September 18, 1970. He was 27 years old. The people who were at Pepper's Lounge that November talked about that night for years, not the whole set. Just one moment, the moment the cable came out of the pedal board and the sound came through with nothing in between. Muddy Waters was asked about it in a 1973 interview. The journalist had heard the story a few times and asked if it was true. Muddy was quiet for a moment. "That boy could play anything he wanted to play," he said. "He mostly played what made the crowd go loud. That night he played what he actually knew." He paused. "Made me wonder what else he'd been carrying around that nobody ever thought to ask him about."